I play a lot of roguelikes, and however you feel about them, love or hate, I'm sure you would agree that they bring a ton of interesting and dynamic elements to the table. Games like Spelunky, FTL, Nuclear Throne, Mystery Dungeon, and The Binding of Isaac come to mind as some of my favorite roguelikes, and I think I'm ready to add another to their ranks. It's called Streets of Rogue, and although it's currently in early access, it's definitely one to keep an eye on. I've spent hours in the current alpha of the game, and I plan to put many more in as the game continues development. It's action-packed and free-form and wildly funny, probably more so than any big game I've played this year. Every time I jump back into the game, I'm reminded, Streets of Rogue is pure video game comfort food. There isn't a traditional story in Streets of Rogue, at least not yet. The game is still in early access, and story elements won't really work until the game is a little further along. And frankly, that's not that big of a deal for me. As the state of the game evolves, so will the story, I'm sure. But Streets of Rogue doesn't really prioritize telling a story anyway. Instead, it cares more about things like emergent gameplay, systems interplay, and systems exploration. Features often found in immersive sims like Dishonored, Prey, or Thief. So it's got the DNA of a roguelike, and it's got the DNA of an immersive sim, and they come together to form something new, but also something familiar, a mix of both. And if that's not for you, well, I totally get that. It's really not for everyone. But for me, there is something very exciting about a game that prioritizes mechanics so heavily. And mechanically, it just works. There are around 20 wildly different characters you can pick from. A soldier, a wrestler, a gorilla, whatever suits your playstyle. Want to regain health by draining it from other people? The vampire is for you. Want to be able to punch someone through a wall? That'll be the gorilla. There's a ton of fun to be had messing with all the different characters, and there's even more fun to be had comboing up multiple characters in multiplayer. I had a particularly good time playing as the vampire while my brother played as the gorilla, and there are plenty of other combinations that would be good for a laugh. So anyways, you move through these randomly generated levels, each based off of a part of a city, slums, industrial, park, and so on. You have to complete each level's missions before the elevator to the next floor opens, and along the way you level up and there's a whole perk system and everything. But a particular high point of the game is its aforementioned emergent gameplay. For example, food heals your characters, so if you need some healing, you could search through all the garbage cans around the level, or simply pay for some food, or why not punch someone through their kitchen wall and raid their refrigerator. There are a ton of moment-to-moment choices, and surprisingly, they're all a whole lot of fun. And I think, because of the way the game is presented and its approach to emergent gameplay, that there's a real case to be made that Streets of Rogue is a comedy game. Like Hitman 2016, or, well, really any game that allows for unscripted chaos, a lot of the humor isn't written into the game, but exists because the player is given the tools to make their own fun. And since the game supports up to 4 players in multiplayer, each added player factors into the chaos in new and increasingly hilarious ways. It quickly stops being about winning the game and changes into a competitive game of what can I do now? What happens if I try to free these gorillas? What happens if I put something in this vent? What happens if I try to free these prisoners? What happens if I shoot a ghost? And when it plays out, it'll either be hilarious to you or it won't, but I really respect the way it tries. Streets of Rogue is ambitious and free-form and often hilarious. I think it fits right in among my very favorite roguelikes. And I think it's only going to get better. The game is currently in alpha, and it still has a long way to go before its full release, where they plan to add a lot more of pretty much everything. More levels, more characters, more items, more music, and most importantly to me, more opportunities for things to go horribly, hilariously wrong. So if you're interested in anything I've talked about, then you should definitely check out Streets of Rogue. Play it with some friends if you get the chance. I highly recommend it, and I can only imagine what it will look like as it gets closer and closer to its full release.